Welcome everybody to another great episode of the Beyond Normal podcast. I'm your host, Kenny Groom. I'm excited to have a fellow podcaster on today. We're changing it up. I'm all about highlighting other people doing amazing things, creatives. And this person that I'm about to bring to the stage is doing some amazing things with their podcast, focusing on STEM talent and the lack thereof in African-American and Latino community. So without further ado, I want to bring Andrew Baines, the co-host of the cuSTEM Journeys podcast. How's it going, Andrew?
What's up, Kenny? I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, man.
This episode is brought to you in partnership with Ascentum, which is an award-winning coaching practice that helps high-performing professionals advance and achieve the promotions and pay they deserve. Ascend to powerful heights with Ascentum. Definitely. Appreciate you for coming on the platform. Podcast life is a real thing. So always excited to talk to somebody going through it, living the day-to-day. You got an amazing focus of your podcast as well. So without further ado, I want to be quiet, open it up to you. Tell folks a little bit about, your story. Before even starting a podcast, tell us a little bit about what Andrew was doing in this world.
Yeah, most definitely. I appreciate you again for having me on the platform. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Andrew Baines. I am an engineer by trade. I went to the University of Texas, San Antonio, where I studied mechanical engineering, received a bachelor's and a master's degree in mechanical engineering. In about 2014, started working for a company known as General Motors, or GM. That was my dream job and really what inspired me and encouraged me to pursue engineering. And somewhere along my way in my career, started making more mental notes and observations of the lack of diversity within STEM. And honestly, if I'm being more transparent, even prior to that, even throughout college and high school, I noticed the lack of individuals that were studying STEM disciplines or degrees or majors in college. And so first thing I did was started a nonprofit. It was called the Legacy of Greatness Foundation. I gave out scholarships to graduating seniors from George Bush High School here in Houston, which is where I'm from. And I did that for a few years. Ended up moving from Detroit back to Houston to kind of settle down and start a family with my wife. And somewhere along the way, when the pandemic hit, I was like, hey, I got a lot of free time, started watching a lot of podcasts. And I was like, yo, this podcast name seems kind of cool. Let me try my hand at it, which was, I would say, ironic. And a lot of people didn't expect that because I'm an introvert by nature, definitely introverted, highly introverted. But I felt like, there were certain things that I wanted to see that I didn't feel like were being represented in media. And I said, hey, this podcast has really kind of opened up the doors of opportunity in terms of exposing people to different knowledge and diverse professionals. And so cuSTEM Journeys was born. And so I started cuSTEM Journeys with a friend of mine from college named Eliseo Iglesias. We both went to UTSA, started the podcast together, and about 2021, I believe. And so the whole idea was really just interview Black and Latino STEM professionals, talk about their journey, their pathway, getting into STEM, how much money they make, obstacles they overcame, unique opportunities that people may not be aware of, unique pathways to getting to where you're trying to go in your career and in your life. And just been rocking and rolling since then. So it's been about 2 years now, really. But we release weekly at this point. So you can tune into the cuSTEM Journeys YouTube channel. That's cuSTEM Journeys, Journeys, and really just trying to, spread awareness, provide pathways and opportunities for folks that are looking to make a higher paying career, make more money, get into STEM or in tech and things of that nature.
I love it. As we all know, tech is not going anywhere. Platforms such as cuSTEM Journeys are definitely needed because people need to see, like you said, for whatever reason, the portrayal of some of these career paths is not as prevalent in our communities. And so it's actually pretty cool right now to be a data nerd, to be an engineer, such as Andrew, right? And so we got to make sure we got to capture that bottle, that genie in a bottle, make sure that it's put in the right light for kids, for that next generation coming up. I think around, we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, and they're, the coding piece, the technical talent piece is always something that they're always trying to figure out. And not everybody that's an entrepreneur is actually going to want to go down the path of coding themselves. And so we'll need tons of talent. We'll need tons of pipeline, tons of people learning these cool new tools that are out there, AI, all the buzzwords, we hear them, but we'll need people that actually want to focus on that, so they can make. I'm willing to pay somebody, right, as I build out the Beyond Normal Media platform, somebody who's technical in coding and doing some of those things, right? So I myself, as the business owner, I can focus on some of the other things like making money, sponsorship, speaking at events, other ways that I can impact people using my superpowers. And so a platform such as Custom Journeys is amazing for myself to come across, because I can see who out there is really, really about that life of being a coder, being a tech, enhancing their technical talent. And that's not something everybody wants to do. And you touched on that, Andrew, where that's been something throughout your life that you focused on. Obviously, with the scholarships, it's amazing. You're paying it forward for that next generation. What are some of those things early on in your life, like, thinking when you're 5, 6, 7, 8, some of those things that you may have been doing around that time where you were probably like, now that you look back on it, you were probably an engineer in the making, even way back then?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. The first thing that always comes to mind is, and the story that my mom always reminds me of, is Connects. I don't know if you really remember those toys, or like it's pretty much like Legos. They're just building blocks that you can like connect different things and build whatever you want to make. So whether it's like a merry-go-round or a Ferris wheel or cars, all those things. So like my mom, it was funny, and it's something that I try to emulate now that I have 2 kids of my own. But I remember her saying, when she first had me and my siblings, she would talk to other parents who had older kids and who had kind of already been through where we were at. And she would always ask them like, hey, what toys are they playing with? What books are you guys reading? Primarily because my mom was a lifelong educator. And so a lot of times people would say, hey, don't just buy them toys just to have fun, but buy them toys that make them think and problem solve. And so I would really say, like, we had a ton of time playing with like Legos, Connects, and things of that nature, just where you start to like get your mind, that young mind, tinkering and thinking like, hey, what can I build? What will my imagination allow me to create? What problem can I solve with this toy or this Connects that I'm using to create? And so really that's probably what I would say was that initial seed that was planted that made me think about engineering, because that was at my earliest stages of being a problem solver. But definitely, I think there's a lot of different opportunities at different points in your life, even beyond, that early childhood phase where you get introduced to new things and new topics, and you're like, okay, that's curious. And I've even had some interesting moments where like entrepreneurship and money. Like I remember we had like a utopia society like in 5th grade, and I forgot what it's called, but essentially we had like our own like class economy, and like everybody had to figure out what they were going to sell or make to like make currency or make money in the classroom. And you always had to like use that money to exchange goods and services. And so mine was like trading football cards and baseball cards and basketball cards. And so there's definitely, like, as I look back, there's quite a few moments that kind of, it makes me, I'm not as surprised, I guess I can say, about like the path that I went, looking back on certain moments in my childhood.
Yeah, man. I remember the Connects. You're taking me back. I feel like
Yeah.
I don't know if they had a distinct song on their commercials, but I just remember their commercials were distinct. Like there were like dinosaurs maybe or something you could build. And then it was like roller coasters or something like that as well. It was a little bit like mechanized a little bit. So I definitely remember Connects. You're taking me back for sure.
Yeah.
And speaking of like building, like you mentioned, entrepreneurship, right? That's something else that you're in. You kind of dove into fully. You spoke on the utopia in the 5th grade. I know nowadays they have like junior achievement, which is the big one where like the kids run the town. Somebody's the mayor, somebody's like the baker and all that stuff. And you got to actually exchange your money, and you see how that money comes in, then that money goes out as an adult. We all know how that is. And that's definitely a big part of being an entrepreneur, managing the ins and the outs of the cash flows and all those good things. I'm curious for you, like where does being an entrepreneur, like owning something on your own, like where does that stack in terms of your priorities in life at this moment? You're an engineer, you're a family man, but where do you see that, entrepreneur life like really fitting into your life?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's honestly something that changes. If I'm being honest, it's a little fluid, um, and it's definitely, I would probably say, in the top 5 or top 3 of things that's like most important to me. For me, and I was actually spending a lot of time this weekend talking to my wife this Memorial Day weekend that just passed, because we had a lot of time to just sit back, reflect, and think about where things are at, like in our relationship, our marriage, and then also like with our kids and things like that. We're always doing like these audits, me and my wife, of like, okay, where are we at? How are things going? And I just think that's healthy maintenance that's like required, right? Like you take your car to get an oil change, whatever. You need to make sure that you're doing like some routine maintenance and setting time aside for like your family and things. But for me, I think the foundation for what I do and everything that I'm looking to accomplish, it starts with like my spiritual relationship with God. I am a believer in Jesus Christ. And then also secondly is like my family. Entrepreneurship is something that like I'm really passionate about, and my goal is to pursue this full time in the very near future, probably within the next few months or so. But I think even before that, I'm a father of 2. Well, I'm a husband and I'm a father of 2 kids. And so when I think about my oldest son who's getting ready to go to kindergarten, there's certain things that I'm always like watching and preparing him for and thinking about, okay, what's the next step for him? And I think that's above entrepreneurship, right? Because like I can go get a job that's going to pay me well and I can provide for the family. Entrepreneurship is something that's extra, where it's like, hey, okay, I have this vision, this passion, this calling to do something in life. But my first calling, I believe, is to like my wife and my kids, because I have to make sure that they're taken care of, not just financially or physically, but then even like mentally, emotionally, all those things. So looking at, okay, hey, how prepared is Noah, my oldest son, for kindergarten? What's his reading level? What do we need to work on? What's his math competency? What do we need to work on? How confident is he? How good is he doing at public speaking or speaking in general, communicating, those kind of things? So that's kind of like I would say my first primary focus. But then right after that, I would definitely say like entrepreneurship is um, top on the list. Like, because it's just, I look at, there's quite a few things that I'm really passionate about, and a lot of it is progressing people within like the Black Latino communities. And I feel like the only way, or a few ways to do that, is by media influence, changing the stories and the narratives that are being told in mass media currently. And then also from financial empowerment. And so for me, pursuing the route of entrepreneurship, especially like in the media and in the recruiting space, will allow me to tackle both of those issues, or tackle this problem from 2 different angles. And so that's why for me, like entrepreneurship is so big and so important. And to be honest with you, I don't think I'll be really fulfilled just going to get another 9 to 5 unless it really aligns with like this compass and this mission and this calling that I feel like I'm working towards, and this problem that I'm trying to solve. But is entrepreneurship, to answer your question, is definitely in the top 3.
No, I love to hear that, man. And it's, uh, you know, I feel like historically, for whatever reason, we haven't necessarily like, in a lot of our families, I can speak to my experience. We didn't necessarily talk about, hey, starting your own business throughout the entire, the childhood. Like you mentioned, you're looking at things for your little ones as early as kindergarten, pre-K. Like I got a little one in daycare now, and it's amazing how much they want a 2-year-old to learn. But then at the same time, I'm understanding like it is not the same as when we were going to school, and little Kenny could just sit there and play with them blocks, and Kenny could be cool. Like, nah, like they want you to be able to at least talk a certain way, learn a couple words, maybe learn a sign language, do some of these other things, to prepare them for, the challenges ahead. And so you're thinking about it holistically. It is not easy. It is definitely not. It is definitely not easy for sure. But the the way that you're looking at it, you specifically focusing on that next generation. I know that you have built. I know that you have built that into what you're doing with custom journeys. I think around the mission statement, it's around the next 30 years. And so I'm curious, like, what are you seeing when it comes to STEM talent in general? Like, what needs to change in order for more Black, more Latino talent to actually get into the space? Like, what are some of those tangible things we could all be doing now to ensure that next generation is ready to go when it comes to some of those STEM skills?
Yeah, I think it's a multifaceted, question. And I think it's going to take a multi-pronged solution to fix it. Sorry, I just heard something. I thought my AirPod dropped. So it takes. I think it's going to take attacking it from a lot of different angles, and I think the earlier the better, right? And so for me, my way of trying to tackle this problem is, number one, from like a media standpoint, right? It's just exposing people to what opportunities are out there. And there's other people that are doing some great work in this space as well, like on the media side, exposing kids, and not even just kids, but people in general. And to that note, like when I first started this podcast, I was like, hey, this is going to be like the go-to resource for any kind of high school kid or college kid that's trying to figure out what major they're going to have, blase. But what I quickly found is that majority of our listeners are like late 20s, early 30s, and even beyond that. And it's like there's this population of people that oftentimes are overlooked by organizations and nonprofits, and either these group of people that want to do something different and they want to expand their capabilities, they want to make more money, they want more opportunities, they see like how technology is taking over everything that we every walk and every way of life currently, and they're looking at AI and chat GPT and cybersecurity, and they're thinking, okay, hey, I've been making a decent living, or I'm not satisfied with what I'm making financially currently. What other opportunities are out there? And so I think media and exposing people from as early as kindergarten on up to like late 40s, 50s, and maybe even beyond there is one way that we really have to tackle and approach the problem. I definitely think there's a mindset shift that has to take place in terms of, making it more culturally acceptable and encouraging kids to pursue things in STEM. Like I've had, now I know plenty of other people that had similar stories where, people don't bat an eye if you say, hey, I'm gonna go pursue NBA or the NFL or even the MLB. But if you say, hey, I'm gonna be an engineer, it's kind of some additional questions are like prodded, and people are trying to poke holes in it a little bit. But I think I'm seeing some of that start to change. And I think part of that is because of this podcasting revolution that we're having, where people are getting more access to the knowledge and people are becoming more financially literate and more aware of like what opportunities are out there. So now it's not so much of people speaking from a place of ignorance. Now it's okay, hey, let me plug you with this podcast or this resource. But definitely, I think podcast media is a big part of it. I think nonprofits, there's some out there that are doing some great work. NSBE, the National Society of Black Engineers, I've been a part of that organization, both on the collegiate side and then also on the professional side. They do a lot of great programming and scholarships and things of that nature. But I think you definitely need financial resources to lower the barriers to entry. There's quite a bit of people that want to go to college that can't afford it. They don't have access to it financially, and they're not willing to go into a bunch of student loan debt to go to college. So you need different financial resources from whether it's from like nonprofits or government entities. I think you need the media exposure and exposure from kids from all different walks of life and backgrounds. I also think you just need people like you and me and other STEM professionals, like sharing their stories and going back and telling other people. I went the first 17 years of my life thinking that I had never met a Black engineer, only to find out my senior year of high school that one of my dad's best friends was an engineer and he worked in oil and gas. And I had known this man pretty much my whole life, and we never talked about what he did for work or how much money he made and things of that nature. So I think we have to do a better job of those of us who have pursued these STEM careers, making sure we're talking to other people about it and encouraging the next generation to pursue it. And then also, I think we need like a serious investment from corporations. Unfortunately, when George Floyd was murdered, we did see a lot of people make pledges and things of that nature. Not every corporation has kind of backed up that pledge with like financial resources or programs and things of that nature to like make sure that these inequities and things that we're faced with in our communities don't continue to happen. But I think we need a vast movement of people really investing in alternative pathways. And one of those pathways is tech apprenticeship programs. And so that's something that I've covered on my podcast quite a bit. And if you're not familiar with tech apprenticeship programs, these are basically opportunities where you can go in and pursue a new career field and go into the let's say you want to learn software engineering or cybersecurity. A company could hire you from day one without you having any knowledge or experience of that career field or any prior experience, and they'll pay you to basically get learned on the job. similar to apprenticeship programs that we've had for plumbers or electricians or other fields. Now they're looking to create some of those programs for technical careers or STEM careers. And so I think we need more of those opportunities for people. That way we can just make sure that the people that were overlooked or may have slipped through the crack, so to speak, they have the same access and opportunities as others who don't come from the financial means and the backgrounds to naturally go through college and things of that nature.
Yeah, I love hearing that. Bridging the barriers. I think actually when I was looking at some of your videos, I feel like the content that was the most viewed was like you just said, for the folks who don't necessarily have the background, but they want to figure out how to get into, tech via apprenticeship or just get their foot in the door. And I know that content right now, people are looking for it. You mentioned some of the avenues earlier, cybersecurity, all these different ways that people can tap into tech. They're looking for that way into the door. But I like how you put it, where it's a concerted effort from all parties involved, corporations. There's some government entities out there. There's some nonprofits. You mentioned NSBE. Everybody can really have a hand in this, right? And we're talking about, the numbers are so low right now. If we say we increase it by 1%, that's an impactful number, right? If over the next couple of years we actually just lift the numbers 1%, you're talking about probably tens of thousands of people getting into. Sorry, that is my wife. But you're talking about you're talking about a significant amount of people getting into a space that they had no real knowledge of, when they were brought into the world. And so the income that comes with that, just the financial security, that's the part that is often overlooked. I don't even know, like you mentioned, the engineer that was your dad's friend. I'm pretty sure it sounded like he was an engineer in a field that probably isn't glamorous, isn't sexy, right? But that's an engineer. Like, we need more people that are doing that, right? Those are cool stories, and we just got to figure out how to tap into that. Those people are never going to be on rap videos, right? Like, we're probably not going to get to that point, but we got to figure out how to make that cool, how to position that as an avenue for people outside of, like you mentioned, like being an athlete. The numbers for that are insane. It's like winning the lottery, in terms of being an athlete in a professional league. And so everybody's not going to win the lotto. What are some of the other ways that we can all be successful in life, man? That's a powerful story. And I'm glad we got you focusing on it with cuSTEM Journeys. I want to make sure people know it's cuSTEM Journeys, the play on STEM. I love it. Are there any episodes where folks have kind of resonated, or any topics where folks are resonating now more than others in this current moment with your guests that you're having on?
Yeah, and you kind of hit on it. Definitely, though, I realized, so when you're first starting a podcast, you don't know what you're really getting, what you're jumping into in the very beginning, right? And so the first 20 episodes were really just me and my co-hosts interviewing like colleagues and people and friends that we worked with, or people that we've known throughout our career. And we just got a chance to try a little bit of a lot. And what I realized along the way was that people were most hungry for opportunities or stories that were either super interesting and unique in terms of how they got to where they're at in their career, or individuals that went through some unique opportunity that others may be able to take advantage of as well. And so that's really when like the tech apprenticeship programs really kind of started to take off. And so I probably have about 3 or 4 interviews with individuals that have gone through some sort of tech apprenticeship or some kind of alternative pathway program where maybe they didn't go to school for computer science, but they're becoming a software engineer, or they don't have any kind of, maybe they were a teacher, but now they're a scrum master after going through some kind of coding boot camp or things of that nature. So usually those are the interviews and the episodes that do the best, where like people can look at their current situation that they're in. They can watch this impactful interview with somebody that maybe we're in their same shoes or in the similar shoes, similar story, similar background, and they can directly draw the line. They can correlate, okay, this is where I'm at, this is where I'm trying to go. What did this person do? What can I emulate? What can I take away from this episode? So those typically do the best, where it's like a apprenticeship program, a boot camp, or even a scholarship or something of that nature. And And then, it also doesn't hurt if somebody worked at a big company, like worked at Google or Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
Those also do well. So, because those are typically companies that a lot of people want to work for, and they want to find out, okay, what did you go through? What was the application process like? What was the interview process like? Like, what do I need to be saying? What do I need to be looking out for? How do I get my foot in the door? So those episodes typically do the best and resonate with people. But I'm looking forward to creating more content and trying more things. And I love to like communicate with the audience, whether it's in the comment section, through type form surveys, on LinkedIn, however, really any way I can through social media, to just also ask them like, hey, what do you want to see? What kind of stories are you curious about sharing and hearing? And just kind of get the people what they want, and figure out how we can better serve them.
I love it. I love it. The engagement, based off what I'm seeing, I just looked at. I like to go to the very first episodes that folks recorded. Some people don't like listening to them, and I definitely see the growth. The numbers have gone up. As you've been recording throughout. Since 2021, like you mentioned. As you look back, like the journey that you've been on with podcasting, like how does it feel? How do you feel about some of those older episodes when you go back and listen to them? Let us know a little bit about the journey and seeing some of those old episodes.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that. I actually, I think the content creators I come across tend to do that. Like there was a guy named John Green. He's an IT professional. I actually interviewed him on my podcast. And when I first reached out to him, he said, "Hey, let me look into your channel and see if I think I'll be a good fit." And it just so happened to be that he went back to like the very first episode, where like the first 2 or 3 episodes, I interviewed my co-host, and then we flipped roles, and my co-host interviewed me. And dude, like we were so trash in the beginning, like it was terrible. Like I'm telling you, it took, just so the way our interviews are structured now, I kind of have like a hard cap of like an hour in terms of interviews when I interview a guest on my podcast. But when we first started, it took us like an hour and a half to get through just one portion of the interview with me. So, for example, like it took him an hour and a half to get through interviewing, hey, what was Andrew's journey from high school all the way up until college? And then it took another hour and a half to go from like college up into starting custom journeys. And so we just didn't know how to communicate, how to record the episodes, how to story tell, things of that nature. So it's been a really big learning process, and it was a lot of ahs and ums, and I lost my thought, and long pauses and things of that nature, and a lot of filler words like and all that, right? So now we've really figured out how to streamline the process. And my co-host has gone on to become a professor at Trinity, so now it's just me hosting the show. But it's really, I figured this thing out. I'm 20 times better than I first started, and I'm sure if I look back a year from now in terms of equipment and shooting and quality and questions and all those things, I'll be 20 times better than I am today. So it's just a continuous learning process. And I tell people all the time, like, hey, you need to start a podcast because it's going to help you build your brand and your authority. And that's been very instrumental for me because not only am I doing stuff in the media space, but I'm also making the pivot into the recruiting world as well, because I don't want to just make the content just to expose people, diverse people, to STEM careers. I also want to be able to help those people directly land jobs in high paying STEM roles. And so starting a podcast has been a way for me to build my brand and build my authority in this space as a recruiter as well. And so I'm always encouraging business owners and people in general to start podcasting so that they can build their brand and build their awareness and their authority online. And so the sooner you get started, man, the better you'll get, because chances are, don't be surprised if you suck in the beginning. That's just part of the process, right? Because chances are you've never had to interview somebody on camera, and not just asking them what's interesting to you, but asking them what's interesting to the audience and figuring out who your audience is and all those other things. So it's been a long journey, but I've enjoyed it. And now it's just about, spreading the wisdom and the wealth with others and helping other people along the journey.
Man, I love that. You just dropped some gems for sure for all those out there looking to tell their story, personal brand, start a business. A podcast is a good way to do that. And to Andrew's point, you're not going to be good at first. Like, it's pretty much a given, right? And so why not just get that out the way, put your 10,000 hours in, think about, when we were growing up, you may have done this, Andrew, but a lot of times our parents may say, hey, go in the mirror and practice your speech and do some of these things before you get in front of the real thing, right? And a lot of times nowadays we just say, hey, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to do it. And the podcast is a good way to just, it's that mirror, right? There's always a self-reflection there. Once you put it on YouTube, it's there forever. And so
that's a perfect point. And what you said earlier, like just to drive the point home even more so, I think what a lot of people don't realize is, like, I meet people all the time and like, oh, you have a podcast? Like, bro, it's too many of y'all out here. Like, everybody got a podcast. And I get what they're saying, right? Because you scroll through IG, you see like a bunch of relationship podcasts, trash podcast, like people just, ranting and things like that. But you can structure a podcast around anything. So like if you like baking cookies and you want to build a business around baking cookies, you can do a podcast around that and interview different chefs, different bakeries in your town or in your city, wherever you're at. If you want to go from being a teacher into like cybersecurity, like you can make a podcast about your journey of learning how to become a cybersecurity professional. And the best thing about it is that it makes that initial contact or that cold call or that cold email, it makes it valuable for the other person on that the other side of that's receiving that call or that email. Because right now, if let's say you don't have a podcast, you want to figure out, okay, hey, I want to talk to this VP at Microsoft and I want to ask him about this role that I saw at this company. How do you do that without it just being purely transactional and you just asking for their time and not providing any value to them? You don't really have a way to do that if you don't have some kind of method, or there's a podcast or a book interview or something of that nature. And so the podcast is a great way for you to kind of have a value exchange where you're not just, pulling from this other person, but it's actually reciprocal and you're like giving them value as well. They can come on your platform, talk about whatever they're working on, whatever they want to promote, or they can just talk about themselves. And that's going to help them as well. When it's time to do a performance review, they can say, hey, I spoke about this, whatever. I built my subject matter expertise in this area by speaking at this conference, speaking on these podcasts, things of that nature. But the podcast is a great tool, even if you don't blow up on YouTube or social media. It's a great way for you to just network and have that opportunity to reach out to somebody, and it makes the introduction far easier. You're not going to have a hard time finding people that want to talk about themselves. Trust me. Like, I don't care what it is, but like I said, it's a great way for you to expand your network and gain access to people that you normally wouldn't have access to. And so it's been super beneficial for me professionally, personally, all that. So I just want to drive that home before getting off here. I just wanted to make sure I said that.
Man, I appreciate you. You dropping, you trying to close out with the gym after gym after gym. For the listeners, Andrew, like you said, it's just podcasting is powerful. I'm glad I came across your platform. I've been streaming the episodes, folks. Every stream counts, whether it's video, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts. We're gonna shout them all out just in case one day they want to sponsor us. But yes, podcasting is a powerful vehicle. It's a powerful medium. I'm glad we got you focusing on the making STEM cool for that next 30 years. That's a big time frame. And so I can only imagine how much you can get done in that time. I appreciate you sharing your story as well with the folks. In closing, I want to pass it to you. Two things, how can folks connect with the brand? How do they, listen in? What's the preferred method for them to tap in? And then what's that last thing you want to leave folks with? You dropped a lot of gems on us in the last couple minutes, even the whole time here. But I'm curious, like, what do you want folks to leave listening to this podcast episode?
Yeah, for sure. So number one, my name is Andrew Baines. You can find me personally on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to get in contact with me. My last name is spelled B as in boy, AINES. In terms of custom journeys, you can find us on all social media platforms, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all that at cuSTEM Journeys, CUSTEM Journeys, JOURNEYS, and then also on cuSTEMjourneys.com. In terms of like closing thought, yeah, you referenced a 30-year comment. I didn't really hit on that much, but if you go on my LinkedIn profile, I put a quote in there, and I can't remember who pulled this metric, but the 30-year comment basically looks at the racial wealth gap in terms of where Black and Latino households medium household net worth is at currently compared to other demographics in America. And right now, Black and Latino families in America are on pace, specifically Black families are on pace to have a median net worth of zero within the next 30 years, if not before then. And so really, when trying to turn that tide and change that metric, number one, I think we have to get into higher paying jobs or higher paying careers. And entrepreneurship is great. That's definitely one of the things that I'm pursuing. And I think that's a great vehicle to change that tide. But if nothing else, we can all pursue or aim for higher paying careers. And I don't think there's any other better way to do that other than STEM careers. And so whether that's science, being a medical professional, a nurse, a doctor, even going into the dental field, whether that's being in tech, IT, cybersecurity jobs are booming right now. There's so many different opportunities. The White House has an initiative for all these new cybersecurity professionals and roles that they need to fill. They're actually really pushing cybersecurity apprenticeship programs in America right now as well. That just kind of shows you the demand, and not only where the demand is currently, but where it's going to be moving forward. And so I think we really got to encourage more people, regardless of age and demographic and background, education level, whatever, figure out how you can go from where you're at to a higher paying career in STEM, and then engineering and mathematics as well. Like those career fields, they're in high demand, and they're always going to be. If you look at the future and where things are going, like things are only going to progress at a more rapid pace. A year from now, it's going to look completely different than the way things look today. A year ago, people weren't talking about AI, Chat GPT. We were talking about blockchain. We were talking about NFTs and things of that nature, but AI was not nearly spoken about as it is right now. And at this point today, AI is already pretty much touching a lot of the different facets and things of life that we're dealing with currently. So just think about what it's going to look like a year from now and figure out, hey, how can you pursue a career that's going to help you be prepared for this revolution that we're already experiencing and that we're just beginning. So that's pretty much where I would close it out. And for me, that's really why I just try to push custom journeys, and not even just custom journeys, but just the problem why I'm so passionate about it, because I want to make sure that everybody has a seat at the table and that we're all not just, surviving, but thriving. I'm not interested in living a life or having my community live a life where we're struggling, we're scraping by, or people are using Black people as synonymous with lack or less than. I want to make sure that we have the same opportunities as any other demographic or culture or community within this country. And so, number one, I think it starts with earning power and money. And so that's really what I'm working to solve. So I hope this gave some value to you all. Feel free to hit me up, touch base with me, contact me, all that good stuff.
Appreciate that, Andrew, for dropping the gems. I got to thank a fellow podcaster, right? Like, podcasting is not easy. There aren't a lot of folks that make it past those first couple episodes. And so the fact that you're in it for the long run, I'm right there with you. Definitely looking forward to streaming more content. Again, folks, every stream counts no matter the platform. Andrew's open to feedback, as you mentioned multiple times. And so I love hearing that, how you're adapting the platform. And I'm just looking forward to seeing what you build it into in the future, and maybe even partnering on some stuff. But I love having fellow podcasters on the platform. This is something I started about, maybe 2 seasons ago, but just seeing folks build their own platform. You're building your own media company. We're entrepreneurs in our own right. And so we're just giving folks a different way, a different look into, what being a business owner looks like. Appreciate you again. And for the folks tuning in, thanks for tuning in to another great episode of the Beyond Normal podcast.